Everyone, I'd like to call to order the zoning hearing for April 5th, 2023. It's 9:30 a.m. Let's begin this morning by rising for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated.
Mr. Chair.
Well, yes, Commissioner Ruane, you're recognized.
Thank you. If it's okay with the rest of my colleagues, I'd certainly like to move Eden Oaks up to number 1. I believe most of the people here for that reason. I think we'll be much more efficient, obviously, if we're able to do that, and I'm sure they want to go on their merry way.
Sure. Show that change made without objection. Thanks, Commissioner. Very good. So if our county staff will introduce the Eden Oak case.
Morning, Commissioners. For the record, my name is Anthony Rodriguez. I am the section manager of the zoning section with the Department of Community Development. Staff is in receipt of a request for a remand of this case to the hearing examiner. The request for remand, which was filed by the applicant last week, is seeking to remand this case to the hearing examiner to allow for the acceptance of additional evidence and testimony addressing the goals, objectives, and policies referenced in the hearing examiner recommendation of denial that was issued back in August of 2022. As well as the staff report that was prepared in October of 2019. The board will need, I believe, will need a motion and a second and a vote to remand that case. Otherwise, staff is prepared to present if the board is so inclined to hear that presentation.
Commissioners, do you have questions on the introduction that's just been given to us? I had one question. I did get a chance to read the staff recommendation, and I thought there was competent, substantial evidence in the staff recommendation to support their recommendation. Is it possible we could just consider that today? Yeah, Mr. County Attorney?
I'm not sure if this is on. Commissioners, you have that as your option. As the Board of County Commissioners, you may hear the case. You have the ability to approve it based on the hearing examiner's recommendation, staff's recommendation, or recommendation by the applicant. You also have the ability to remand or continue the case. So all of those options are available to you at your disposal.
But you also said we would have the ability to deny it based on the staff recommendation as well, correct?
Correct, sir. If the board is so inclined to entertain a motion for denial based on the staff recommendation, your Land Development Code permits you with that ability.
Okay, thanks. Just wanted to get all of our options out there. Commissioner Ruane.
Mr. Chair, with that in mind, I'd like to make a motion on the floor for denial consistent with staff's report with all the inconsistencies through goals 10 through goals 101 all the way through to 1.24-1-1. That would be my recommendation for denial based on staff's denial report.
Okay. I want to accept your motion, but let me ask our county attorney, is it appropriate for me to accept that motion at this time, or should we just go ahead and go forward with the presentation by staff and applicant and then make the motion after that?
Well, I think the first step, if I may, is to, if I'm understanding the tea leaves here, deny the request for remand from the applicant, and then you are correct, have applicant and staff present the case, and then have your motion.
I apologize, I'm premature.
Okay. So based on your recommendation, then I would look for a motion to deny the request for remand.
Correct.
Okay. Does somebody wish to make that motion? No? Okay. Does somebody wish to make a motion then to request, to honor the request for the remand? So then
I understood. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Greenwell.
I understand that we should hold off on that until they present their side of it?
The applicants requested a remand, just like a continuance. The board entertains that idea
They have
first.
requested one.
They have requested one.
I apologize.
And the board needs to make a motion on that item.
Okay.
If the motion is to deny, as indicated by Commissioner Wayne, then we need to hear the case, present the case, have staff and the applicant have their presentation, and then move forward with the motion as presented by Commissioner Wayne.
Okay, so do you guys get that then? So what do we want to do on the question of the remand? Is there a motion on it?
It appears to me it fell from lack of support, right? So
If there's no motion in support or favor, then it dies for lack of anything.
All right, if everybody agrees to that.
with that. My question is, as far as there was a motion on the floor, and I was getting ready to second it, and then the discussion changed, but you're saying we cannot make that motion and second, go forward without the presentation, which we already have the information, we have the summary, so do we have to go through that
The
anyway?
applicant's representative is asking me whether she would have an opportunity to address you on the request for remand.
I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I think we're ready to hear the case today. I guess we should could you speak for briefly, like 3 minutes, about why you think we should give you the remand then? Okay, let's do that. We'll honor that request, and then let's dispose of the remand question and go on with hearing the case if we want to.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sarah Spector with Retzel and Andrus on behalf of the applicant. We had submitted a memo to staff in advance of this hearing today, providing our justification for our remand request. I don't know that it made it in your package. Did you all have an opportunity to review that? Okay.
Yeah, I don't see it in my package.
All right, so I will, in 3 minutes, tell you what that 3-page memorandum said. We are asking for remand.
You hit a timer, Mickey. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We're asking for remand because the hearing examiner's recommendation on the Eden Oak request only spoke to one of the insufficiency matters that was addressed in the staff report. That was policy 101.3.2 in the comprehensive plan. We had 2 issues with that. The first issue was that was changed after our application was found sufficient and would not apply to our project with an equitable estoppel argument. The hearing examiner had said she doesn't have the right to grant equitable relief, so that was another reason we were coming before you. But since that time on, I think it was March 12th, the hearing examiner issued an opinion in the Greenwell case where she opined on actually she had remanded the case or sent it back to staff and the applicant to consider the same provision that she recommended denial on in this case. And after doing so, with the applicant providing that explanation and justification for why you can build in the coastal high hazard area if you're not on uplands, but instead wetlands, the hearing examiner recommended approval of that request and did not speak to that comprehensive plan provision, which is the only justification for her recommendation of denial in this case. So we have a recommendation of denial in our case, and on the same issue, a recommendation of approval in another case. So that is the reason for our remand, is that, 1, the hearing examiner reconsider her position in Eden Oak, given her reconsideration in Greenwell. And there were, I have a list here of 10 other inconsistencies that staff found that the hearing examiner did not address in her report, that we did address and provided competent substantial evidence on, that we are consistent on those points. So for those reasons, we've requested remand, and if the remand is not approved, we've also asked staff if they would consider a continuance, because they said they were not they did not oppose this remand request, and they also do not oppose a continuance request, though I will let Anthony say that since I don't want to put words in his mouth. But that's why we're here today with a remand request.
Thank you very much for your presentation and request. Very good. All right, so commissioners, back to the board then on.
Mr. Chair, may Citadel Captiva Conservation Foundation be heard on the remand question? I think we have some points in opposition to what we just heard from the applicant. I'm Richard Grosso, by the way. Excuse me.
Richard, thanks for standing up and talking. Let me talk to the board real quick. Thanks. I didn't mean to open that can of worms. I thought we could just dispose of the case today. Again, after reading the staff report, I found competent substantial evidence to deny the case today. But commissioners, I'll look for your advice and help on how to get us to where we need to go. It sounds like they've asked for a remand or a continuance. So we need to answer that question, whether we want to grant them a remand.
I'm not in favor of a remand or continuance. I think there's more than substantial competent evidence. inconsistencies with goals 101, 122, 123, 124, objectives 2.1, objectives 2.2, 101.2, 101.3, 123, 123.1, 123.2, 123.3, 123.4, policies 1.15, 1115, 212, 221, 512, 101, 1.1, 101, 1.2, 101.3.3, 2, 122.12, 123.23, 123.24. There's far too many items and inconsistencies within the Lee plan. I just cited over almost 24, and I'm not really prepared to do any type of remand or any type of continuance. There's just far too many inconsistencies, and I'm going to keep with my original motion for denial.
So based on what I'm hearing then is a motion to deny their request for remand is in order, and then hear the case, and then make your second motion about denial.
Correct.
Okay, so will somebody make the motion to deny the request for remand?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion from Commissioner Ruane and a second from Commissioner Pendergrass to deny the request for remand. Now, I imagine we should take public comment on that motion, Mr. County Attorney?
No, sir, you're not, well, it's up to you whether or not you take public comment on the remand. I was just getting your attention for after that motion to take up the motion on the request for continuance just laid out by Ms. Spector.
Okay, so we'll do the remand, then we'll do the continuance, then we'll hear the case if everything goes the way it seems like it's going to go. Okay, very good. So any further discussion then on the motion for remand, denying the request for remand? Okay, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries without objection.
I'm going to make the second motion, obviously, to deny a continuance.
Okay, and so we have a motion to deny their request for continuance. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. The motion was from Commissioner Ruane. Do we have any discussion on their request to deny the request for continuance? Okay, I see no discussion. Mr. County Attorney, do I need to take public comment on this before I call the question?
No, sir.
Okay, very good. All right, so at this time, are there any objections to that motion? I see no objections. That motion carries unanimously. So at this time, we can hear the case, and then once we've heard the case, we'll make the motion on how we want to go with the case. Okay. So, Mr. Rodriguez, you're recognized to present.
Thank you. I will be, for the sake of brevity, as quick as I can. Commissioner Ruane has already discussed, well, first, let me start back. This is a request to rezone approximately 306 acres from agricultural AG2 to residential plan development to allow for a maximum of 55 single-family residences. The property is here outlined in red, mostly on the west side of Shell Point Boulevard, a little bit of property on the east side, and also all north of McGregor Boulevard. Here is a future land use map that depicts the future land use designation of the property. As you can see, it is predominantly wetlands. Here is a kind of a zoom in of the development area. The area is slated for development, and you can see those little polygons of orange there. Those are recognized upland areas based upon a jurisdictional determination that was issued by the South Florida Water Management District. Commissioner Ruane touched on all the inconsistencies identified in the staff report with the Lee plan. These goals, objectives, and policies address particularly protection and enhancement of wetlands, conservation of land, water, and natural resources, protection of life and property, development within coastal planning areas, compatibility with surrounding uses, and also other public health, safety, welfare concerns. In addition to the denial based in the staff report based upon inconsistency with the Lee plan, staff also concluded that the request will adversely affect environmentally critical and sensitive areas as well as natural resources. In particular, this project proposes approximately 37 acres of direct impacts to wetlands, which includes mangrove swamp and saltwater marsh. This is part of a larger coastal wetland ecosystem, and that includes state preserved lands to the south and west of this property. And this is typically the first line of defense during storm events, both in terms of mitigating wave action and also capacity for floodwaters and storm surge and things of that nature. The request, if approved, would decrease native habitat, including for the federally endangered small-toothed sawfish. The property is also within the Coastal Barrier Resources System designated by Congress. And there is a potential for increase in pollution and nutrient loading resulting from the proposed development, both in terms of fertilizer utilized for landscaping on this property, but also pollutants from boating activity that are proposed by the request. And then finally, staff concluded that the request is incompatible with existing and planned uses. There's a significant excavation and dredging activity that's proposed to extend an existing waterway that would alter the length, shape, and depth of that waterway. This would impact existing residential lots to the north of this property within the Palm Acres subdivision, both by removal of existing mangroves and vegetation, and also by altering the topography that abuts these residential uses. And again, impacts to the mangrove, swamp, and saltwater marsh that exist on this site would exacerbate flooding, storm surge, and other erosion-related impacts. That's a kind of a brief Reader's Digest version of the staff report. Staff is here to answer any questions you all might have, and as is the applicant.
Very good. Commissioners, do you have any questions for our staff on the report? Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll call the applicant to make their presentation. Very good. Morning.
Good morning again. Sarah Spector for the record, on behalf of the applicant. As Mr. Rodriguez explained, we are asking for a request to rezone approximately 306 acres of agriculturally zoned land to residential plan development to allow for the development of 55 single-family homes on only approximately 15% of the 306 acres. Most of the points, or all of the points that Mr. Rodriguez raised were environmental in nature, so I'm going to ask our environmental consultant, Paul Owen, to come up and give a presentation and present our competent substantial evidence to show that we are consistent with the comp plan.
Okay.
Morning.
Morning.
I'm Paul Owen with Owen Environmental Consulting. I'm going to be speaking about the environmental aspects of this project. Let's see. Yeah, it's just clicking. Great. All right, so the project is located at the mouth of the Caloosahatchee River. It's not actually on the coast. The parcel's on the east and the west sides of Shell Point Boulevard, and they total 158 acres. And there are approximately 142 acres of mangrove islands, which was shown in the previous slide. Sorry. All around that Shell Point area and sprinkled in that area. The total property, as Sarah said, is 300 acres plus or minus. The Shell Point communities are to the north, and to the south is Palm Acres subdivision north of the project. The project area is outlined in yellow. The project footprint is in, the development footprint, that is in red. Shell Point Communities and Palm Acres subdivision is located to the north of that, which you can see, and the state-owned lands to the west and to the south. So historically, all right, so what I'm showing is the project outlined in yellow. So in 1970, this is a 1972 aerial. It shows the site alterations best. Actually, when I get to that, this is a 1958 aerial. This shows the site was pristine and consisting of mangrove wetlands with mature black mangroves, forest, and little or no understory except for red mangroves along the coast. Let's see, there were saltern wetlands in the middle of the site. Historically, water flowed across the site during higher tide events, and fresh water flowed from the higher ground toward the shore. Both flushed the system and allowed healthy mangrove growth and proper function. This is an overlay showing the future Shell Point and Palm Acres communities to the north. So between 1958 and in 1966, the mosquito ditches, which were meant to drain the wetlands, were installed. Ditches were dug in a pattern and the spoil was placed at the edge of the cells. These ditches drain some areas near the shore, but block tidal flow and freshwater runoff. At this time, Shell Point Boulevard is under construction. Shell Point community is being created, and the canals were dug, and the mangrove wetlands were filled. Shell Point now acts as a berm, blocking tidal flow from the southwest and northeast, and freshwater runoff from the east to getting west. So all the project area was cleared between 1966 and 1968, as you can see in this slide. And Shell Point community is under construction. The Shell Point residential development, the key canals have been dug and mangroves have been filled. Yep, sorry, I'm trying to keep track here. So, okay, so this slide shows that between 1968 and 1972, the fill was initiated and the key cuts were made for eventual canal system in the place on site on our property. The berms are up and it impounds a large area of the project footprint, which hydrologically isolates and alters the hydrology of the areas on site in the berm. Shell Point community, the impacts are complete to the north, and Palmaker cul-de-sacs and canals have been constructed. The 1974 aerial shows that there's some additional fill in the western side of the site by 1974, and the Palmaker impacts are complete. So between 74 and 81, the area was cleared again and allowed to revegetate. And between 1981 and 1986, a portion of the west site, including the project area, was again cleared of vegetation, as you can see on the slide. And presently, you can see that both sides of the property are revegetating with significant areas of exotic infestation, especially in the impounded area. All right, so the existing site conditions today, the uplands, wetlands, and mosquito ditches on site were intensively mapped, and we spent a lot of time on site looking at historic, and also looked at historic and current aerials to help map these areas. The overall applicant-owned property includes 143 acres of mangrove islands, which are shown outlined in yellow, 48 acres of mangroves. The mangroves that are within the mosquito ditch system, 58 acres. Mangroves that are invaded by exotics, 3 acres. Mangroves and mosquito ditches kind of together is 12 acres. You've got disturbed mangroves, which is 1 acre. You've got brackish marsh invaded by exotics, 7 acres. Exotic dominated wetlands, which is inside the impounded area, which is in the development footprint, of 9 acres. Canal and river bottom, 11 acres. And upland spoil, 8 acres, which is the uplands that Anthony was talking about that has been found upland by the South Florida Water Management District. So there are 31.92 acres of impacts that are proposed to mostly low to moderate quality wetlands, of which 2.32 acres are impacts to the higher quality mangrove wetlands. All impacts are to wetlands that have been cleared twice over the years and are surrounded by or adjacent to berms or mosquito ditches. Most of the impacts are to the impounded wetland, which is 18.36 acres, which is the area, I don't know how to point, but it's in the cul-de-sac looking area in the project footprint.
Probably put the mouse cursor over what you're referencing if you.
Thank you. That's this area. That's the impounded area. All right, sorry, lost my place. And almost all the impacts are to areas that were being prepared for development, including the cul-de-sacs and canals. So as a result of all of the site alterations over the years, the on-site wetlands consist primarily of a dense thicket of sapling mangroves, which are 8 to 12 feet tall, with trunks of 1 to 3 inches in diameter. These stunted trees are actually 40 to 50 years old. We counted the rings and several trees along the areas to determine that. All the wetlands proposed to be impacted have been completely cleared twice, and 58% are also impounded. As such, these mangrove and salt marsh wetlands do not provide the same level of functions as high-quality wetlands. including sediment stabilization, nutrient pollution, protection of upland property, attenuation of storm surge, fish and wildlife habitat. We evaluated the wetlands on site using the Little Pine Island Mitigation Bank functional assessment. Wetland quality evaluations were developed and evaluated by the state, which is the South Florida Water Management District, and the Army Corps of Engineers during that for their permitting processes. We have determined how these science-based function analyses are done, and our project and those agencies have agreed to our scores. Our scores were reviewed and approved by the Army Corps and the district during the state and federal permitting process. These scores for the wetland impact areas ranged between 0.23 and 0.4 out of a possible 1, with an average score of 0.54. 0 is the lowest. In contrast, the pristine mature mangrove systems in the proposed preserved areas and nearby areas would be anticipated to get a score of 0.9, maybe even 1, because they're in great shape. The impacts are not to high-quality mangrove wetlands due to the repeated clearing and mosquito ditching, which has created cells of altered hydrology and severely restricts the tidal flow and stormwater runoff. The saltwater marshes in the project footprint are actually completely within the impounded area. This area is hydrologically isolated from adjacent areas by a 2 to 3 foot high spoil berm and does not have significant tidal exchange. That is shown, actually you can see that around the edge of the impounded area. That's a good indication of where that is. This area is flooded in the wet season by rainfall, and the water stacks to 3 to 4 feet tall. Then the area dries out in the dry season, and salt crystals form in the mud. The water during the wet season is fresh and then slowly becomes concentrated salt water. The area is infested with exotic vegetation, including Brazilian pepper, melaleuca, and cattails, which die back occasionally depending on the salinity. It also includes areas of mangroves, which die back every few years, presumably due to the high water levels. So this is not a high-quality mangrove area or saltwater marsh. This is not normal, not native. The Water Management District and the Army Corps of Engineers have agreed with the scores, which confirms that most of the impact areas are not high-quality wetlands. The wetland functions at the Eden Oak site will be replaced via a science-based state and federal regulatory program. Therefore, the conservation of wetland functions at the site, Eden Oak site, plus the utilization of the regionally significant mitigation bank credits have been evaluated and provide a wetland functional uplift to the coastal Lee County wetlands that far outweighs any wetland functional losses on site. All right, so I'm not going to go through all this, but the applicant modified the site plan significantly. Started off with a much more aggressive site plan that impacted both sides of Shell Point Boulevard, as you can see in this slide. They progressively scaled back at the request of the agencies. There was a marina on the east side. All that's been removed so that all of the development is now on the west side, as shown here. The red area is the proposed footprint. The only thing that's on the east side is a flushing cut to help the site meet water quality standards that flows from the east side under Shell Point Boulevard to the west side to the canal. All right, so let's see, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, okay. So 99% of the currently existing higher quality mangrove wetlands are preserved on the property and are not proposed as mitigation for the wetland impacts. All the mitigation will be done at the mitigation bank. I'm not taking any credit for any of the preservation. 89% of the site will be preserved, which includes the islands. And mitigation for the wetland impacts will be provided at the Little Pine Island Mitigation Bank of 18.57 credits. The mitigation on Little Pine Island represents upfront, successful, completed high-quality type-for-type mitigation with financially assured management in perpetuity. So regarding protected species, we conducted a protected species assessment. No listed species were observed except white ibis and a tricolored heron, which is common to see in wetlands, no nests were observed. Regarding the small-tooth sawfish habitat, we expect National Marine Fisheries would finalize a favorable biological opinion once we re-engage into the federal permitting process. We are well in that process. Only man-made small-tooth sawfish habitat is proposed to be impacted. And we are replacing that habitat with more than a 1-to-1 ratio. The project meets the Lee County Manatee Protection Plan for the number of slips proposed, and the Fish and Wildlife Service has issued their consultation in concurrence with the project. The purpose of the culvert, let me see if I can find that slide, sorry. No, I need to go back. Right, sorry. All right, so I was talking about the culvert under Shell Point Boulevard. The purpose of is a flushing channel so that the proposed canal meets the state water quality standards within 4 days of flushing. The project includes removal of exotic vegetation from the property, removes the seed source, which benefits the surrounding conservation lands. It also includes the preservation of 259 acres of wetlands by perpetual conservation easement, which is not being used for mitigation credit, which removes the possibility of any development of those islands or anywhere that's being preserved. It is important to note that the mitigation for all the wetlands is provided by Little Pine Island Mitigation Bank credits. All right, so the next slide here regarding staff point. Staff report highlights. I'm talking about the policies, policy 1.1.5 and 1.5.1. Regarding density and other agencies' status, we have obtained a formal jurisdictional determination from the South Florida Water Management District, which is in agreement with the extent of uplands on site, and the property will have adequate density for the proposed number of units based on the amount of uplands on the site. The Water Management District had a couple of outstanding issues during that process. It had to do with the culvert under the road, the agreement with the county, and the small-tooth sawfish biological opinion. That the application to the district is on hold pending the resolution of those issues. The applicant is working with the DOT, Lee County DOT, on a drainage easement and maintenance agreement, and National Marine Fisheries was working on a biological opinion based on my last conversation with the reviewer. Also, the federal review agency, the Army Corps of Engineers, had stated in an email that the project is now proposed, is proposed to be in compliance with the 404 requirements to include avoidance, minimization, and compensatory mitigation. They did a thorough review of this project and found it to be permittable. Also, the Fish and Wildlife Service has issued their consultation letter in favor of the project. It is important to understand that the Army Corps of Engineers, South Florida Water Management District, and the Fish and Wildlife Service have reviewed the project, and after their thorough analysis of the impact reduction, the various site plan revisions, the quality of the areas to be impacted, and the mitigation proposed, the project meets their criteria and can be permitted. These are the agencies that have the scientific expertise and the authorization to review wetland and listed species issues for projects. Once the National Marine Fisheries biological opinion has been issued and the ERP application has been submitted to the South Florida Water Management District, so once the district permit has been issued, the Army Corps can issue their permit. So objective 2.1, land conservation. The project does impact 31 acres of wetlands. However, Lee Plan does not say that all lands must be conserved. The project will conserve 259 acres of wetlands, including 143 acres of pristine mangrove wetlands on applicant-owned islands. Regarding policy 2.1.2, new land uses must be consistent with the future land use and Lee Plan and density. We have obtained a formal jurisdictional determination from the South Florida Water Management District, which shows that the project will have adequate density. The project does protect 259 acres of wildlife habitat and will comply with the Lee Plan. Regarding policy 2.2 and policy 2.2.1, public health, safety, and welfare, the impacts are not to high-quality habitats, as I have described. The better quality wetlands were avoided and preserved in the plan. Riprap and mangrove plantings are proposed as part of the project, which will stabilize the banks. This was designed by a state-licensed professional engineer, and it will be reviewed and approved by the South Florida Water Management District, who will have on staff their professional engineer. The proposed canals and ditches, which will be stabilized with riprap and mangrove plantings, are commonly approved as part of many communities and roadway ditches in the canals in Southwest Florida. Regarding policy 104.1.1, protection of natural resources of coastal planning areas from damage caused by inappropriate development, the LEED plan requires that development is strictly controlled in wetlands in the coastal planning area. This project has been strictly controlled and is only proposing 55 units on 300 acres. The LEED plan does not say that there are to be no impacts to wetlands. Also, the impacts proposed are not to high-quality habitats. These mangroves are a stunted, dense thicket, are mostly hydrologically isolated. They do not have the same functions as the pristine mangrove wetlands nearby. The LEED plan states that the county will conserve and enhance natural functions of wetlands. The project will conserve 259 acres of wetlands. 143 of them are applicant on islands. The project will benefit the water quality in the area by improving the flushing of the existing dead-end canals from the very poor quality to good quality. The project will benefit Little Pine Island and the surrounding wetland communities by the purchase of mitigation bank credits, which is of regional significance. And I think, sorry. Policy 1.105.1.5, protection of human life and development property from natural resources. The mangroves are stunted, dense thicket, which are hydrologically isolated or altered. They do not have the same functions as mangrove wetlands. Regarding policy 107.2.3 and 107.2.4, which is in respect to managing the county's wetlands and upland ecosystems, the impacts are not to high-quality mangroves, as I stated. I'm going to skip ahead because I don't want to be too repetitive here, I'm sorry. Objective 107.3, regarding maintaining and enhancing fish quality and diversity. The National Marine Fisheries was writing a biological opinion that was favorable, and we're replacing any habitat in more than a 1-to-1 ratio. Policy 108.1.2, regarding managing estuarine ecosystems. Again, these impacts are not high-quality habitats, as I've described. And regarding policy 103.1.1, 103.1.2, 113.1.5, and 114.1.1, regarding conservation, maintenance, and enhancement of natural balance of ecological functions of the coastal planning area. The impacts are, again, not the high-quality habitats. They're the better quality wetlands were avoided and preserved in the plan. So in conclusion, it's my professional opinion that the project is consistent with the LEED plan and the Land Development Code, and that the project will be a benefit to Lee County and the surrounding regional ecosystem. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions on the presentation as it was presented? No? Did you have one conclusion? Okay, absolutely.
Yes. Thank you, Paul. Again, Sarah Spector for the record. In conclusion, as a reminder, the hearing examiner's recommendation was based almost entirely on policy 101.3.2 of the LEED plan, which was not introduced or adopted until after we were found sufficient on our application. But regardless, it does not preclude development in the coastal high hazard area to only uplands. Rather, as the hearing examiner has subsequently concluded, there are additional permits that will be required from other agencies and from the county itself that resolves this issue, including the other agencies that will address wetland impacts that the county does not. As Mr. Owen has presented, the project is actually consistent with all of the goals and policies that staff has found that they are inconsistent with. I do want to remind you that a few important points that Mr. Owen raised was that these are not high-quality wetlands. The wetlands that are on the site that are pristine, there's 143 acres of the 306-acre site that will be preserved, will not be touched. And we will only be building on 15% of the site that has been impacted several times over history, as Mr. Owen has shown you in the aerials. So with that, we would request that you approve this request. Thank you.
For your presentation. All right, commissioners, does anybody have any questions at this time for the applicant then? All right, seeing none, then we'll move into the the participants of record section. Before we jump into that, yeah, Mr.
Chairman, if I could ask a question to the county
Pendergrass?
attorney.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before we start public comment, since we were attempted to make a motion earlier for denial by the district commissioner, can we entertain that before the comments, without taking a vote, just so the clarity of the spectators of what our direction is going to be?
Typically, I've seen the board do it a number of ways, whether wait till the public participation is done, or in certain circumstances, board has made a motion in a second, and then before the vote, actually had the participants of record speak. So it's at your disposal.
And I knew that, I was just making sure that for clarity, for procedurally, we can allow to do that. We can do that at any time throughout this process. This information has been given to us prior to today, so we could make that even earlier if we wanted to. So if we wanted to move, take that action now, we could.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You know, and Commissioner, if you'll indulge a dialogue for a second, you know, yesterday we got into an interesting situation where we had a motion on the floor and then we took public comment on that motion on the floor, and then the interpretation from the county attorney's office was that when a separate motion was made, we had to go through public comment all over again. I think, you know, the preference here with the amount of speakers that we have would be to open the floor for public comment, take public comment one time on the issue, and then propose a motion and debate that motion, so that we don't have to then take public comment on each successive motion if the motion were to change. That was the reasoning why. But if you're okay, so, you know, I'll accept one if somebody wants to make one, but I'd rather just give a good speech about public decorum, hear from the public, and then we can debate the motion based on the public hearing that we hear, and then take public comment one time. So real quickly, I did want to talk to the members of the audience who came today. So, you know, while this is something we do every first and third Wednesday of the month, this may be for many of you the first time you've been at a zoning hearing. We do like to honor the rules of decorum here when we speak in public comment. So, you know, the number one rule is just to be respectful and treat people the way you would want to be treated. So avoid interrupting speakers, avoid personal attacks towards speakers, avoid any kind of, we would ask that you would avoid any kind of booing or hissing or things that would intimidate another speaker or interrupt them. Also, please avoid applause too. It can be very intimidating for anybody to come to the podium, and we just want to make sure that we treat everybody the same way we would want to be treated as we're up there. We also ask no personal attacks when you talk. Just direct your comments to the chair, and we will take those comments, all of us, into consideration as we should. We also would ask stay on topic, you know. Try to stay to what we're going to be voting on today. We don't need to go into anything outside of today's agenda. And then finally, just in an effort to make sure that we have over 142 speakers today. It doesn't appear that all of them have shown up, but it's still going to be a long day. In order to give everybody a chance to speak, our administrative code offers us a 3-minute time limit in these cases where we have a lot of speakers. So I'm going to call each person. You're going to have your 3 minutes to talk, but there's a green light, a yellow light, and a red light at the top of the podium. When the yellow light comes on, that's your signal to start to think about wrapping it up. And when the red light comes on, I'm going to call the next speaker, again, just to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak today as part of the hearing. You do have an option today. You could, if you wanted to, for expediency's sake, waive your time to speak in opposition of this or in approval of this. You have the ability to do that. And you'd simply, if you want us to deny, you could say, I waive my time to speak in denial or in opposition of this development. Or you could say, if you wanted us to approve it, you could say, I waive my time to speak in approval. And then that way we can note how you felt about it if you didn't want to share the full 3 minutes of comments. And of course, you can use 3 minutes, but you don't have to use 3 minutes. If you can say it shorter, you're more than welcome to. So I think with that, that's a good explanation of public comment today. So our first speaker that I will call is Audrey Albrecht, and Manuel Aparicio can go after her. Aubrey, are you here? Okay, I don't see Aubrey here. Manuel, are you here? Manuel Aparicio, the fourth. Okay, I don't see him. How about Frederick Armstrong? Okay, Frederick. And then after Frederick would be Michael Armstrong. Is Michael here? Same person. Oh, okay. All right.
My other personality.
Very good. All right, so Mickey, you're set for the 3 minutes. Very good. All right, thank you, sir. Good morning.
I speak in opposition to approving the new development. I lived on Sanibel for 15 years before moving to Shell Point, where I live now. And when I moved to Sanibel, I relied on the Sanibel plan. And to the credit of the Sanibel city government, that plan has been staunchly maintained. And I hope the commissioners here will take the same approach to the county plan and disapprove the application.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, it sounds like we took care of Frederick and Michael Armstrong then. How about Barbara Bill? Barbara Bill? Okay. How about James Bowler? James Bowler, are you here? Marilyn Brownwell, or Brunell? Marilyn Brunell? Okay. Joseph Burkhart? Joseph Burkhart? Kevin Burkhart? Melissa Butler? Melissa Butler? And just please raise your hand if you are here so that I can call you up. Jeannie Cargulo? Oh, good. And you can come help me make sure I pronounced it correctly. I apologize if I didn't. Yeah, you could have helped me, Commissioner. And then Lynn Castellano, if she's here, would be after.
Okay. I just have a couple of things to say. Is remember Ian? The hurricane flooded area had flooded this area with, and there are mangroves there. It will be much worse when the mangroves are removed, including the new homes that are built there. Even if the new homes were built higher due to codes, it would do nothing to protect the homes that are already there, and therefore I think that new homes should not be allowed in this area. So obviously I'm against the building of the property.
Thank you for your comments. How about Lynn Castellano? Lynn, are you here? Okay, how about Sylvia Chamberlain? Sylvia Chamberlain? Craig Chandler? Craig
Chandler is an employee with the city of Sanibel. He is not here, but I'm here to represent the city today. Is it appropriate for me to speak?
Yeah, Holly, are you also on here later?
I am not.
You're not.
Several other city employees who are, but I will be the only person speaking today.
So, Michael, I want to get your interpretation on that. Typically, if somebody has an attorney, we've allowed their attorney to appear for them. She doesn't appear to be an attorney, but what's your take on this, Mr. County Attorney?
The code does not allow her to speak on the other individual's behalf.
Okay, the code does not. Okay. Sorry, Ms. Milbrand. Thank you. Okay, so Craig Chandler is absent. How about Jean Chandler? Jean Chandler? Oh, good. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm also from Shell Point. My father lived at Shell Point in assisted living. When he was 98, there was a hurricane. He had to sleep on a lawn chair for 6 nights. And he begged me, please don't make me do this again. I said, what can I do, Dad? I've done everything I can. I've headed up the Lee County, or the Shell Point Green Team, tried to educate ourselves and others about how to prevent this sort of thing. But we're helpless now. We're appealing to you who have the power to block this new development. And I beg you to do so for all the residents of Shell Point.
Thank you. All right. Ralph Clark? Is Ralph Clark here? Okay, good. Good morning, Ralph. And then after Ralph will be William Kohlauer. Morning.
Thank you. My name is Ralph Clark. I live on Caleb Drive, which is at Palm Acres, and my property adjoins the Eden Oak property. So my backyard is this particular project. So there's a lot written about the positive value of mangroves. We've all heard it, a lot of it. Positive on water quality, on wildlife habitat, but also on storm surge protection, and that's what I want to speak to. I'm obviously in denial request. The Conservancy of Southwest Florida report, which recently came out, describes the mangrove situation. They say the mangroves, stand as guardians to the land. The first line of defense is capable of breaking down wave heights up to 66% and reducing storm surge by nearly 2 feet over a kilometer. Ian did stop by, and I am clear recipient of that surge protection. My house on Caleb Drive is on the same elevation. We built it 5 years ago, so it's on an 8-foot elevation, which is code at the time. It's on the same elevation as the houses on the other side of Shell Point Boulevard, which are on a golf course. My house had less than an inch of water from the surge. The house is protected by the golf course, had 2 to 3 feet, same elevation. Over 90% of those houses were uninhabitable for over 6 months. So I'm just saying, I love those mangroves. They may be compromised by the description of the developer, but they look great to me, and they saved me probably $250,000 or more. So why would we let anyone destroy that safety barrier? Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. William Kohlauer? William Kohlauer? Okay. How about Kelly Collin? Kelly Collin? Okay. How about Barbara Joy Cooley? Barbara Joy Cooley? How about Claude Crass? Claude Crass? Okay. How about Nancy Crass? Nancy Crass? How about Nancy Curtin? Nancy Curtin? How about Dana Detmar? Dana Detmar? Okay. How about Dave Dimmick? Dave Dimmick? Okay. How about Nancy Dimmick? Nancy Dimmick? How about Lemoyne Ebner? Lemoyne Ebner? How about Pamela Ellis? Pamela Ellis? James Evans. I know James is here. After James would be Diane Fike, if she's here. Or Feek.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm James Evans. I'm the CEO of the Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation. I'm here with our attorney, Richard Grosso. I would like to defer my time to Richard Grosso, if that's possible.
Excellent. Yep. The code allows for...
Members of the Commission, I'm Richard Grosso. The Sanibel Captiva Foundation has 6 folks that have signed up to speak today. If they could all defer their time to me, can I get 5 minutes?
Yeah, that sounds fine. I think that sounds fine.
Thank you very much. Richard Grosso on behalf of Sanibel Captiva Conservation Foundation, who participated below in the hearing examiner process. There's a reason you have that process. What you were given today, the presentation, the hearing examiner heard all that. They already tried that case, already heard all of that evidence, and made her findings of fact. Her basis, the strong basis for the clear violations, were not, as counsel said to you earlier, the wetland policy, no wetland development in coastal high hazard area. The 3 key violations were Goal 101, 101.3, and 5.1.2, which were all about floods, protecting life and limb in the face of hurricanes and coastal storms and that kind of thing. So it was not at all this, what we heard earlier today, that it was only this one wetland policy that was the basis. Not at all accurate, to be honest about it. Those are about life and limb. The presentations you heard about federal agencies or state agencies, they don't get to rezone property. They don't make that decision. Only Lee County gets that decision. They don't apply your comprehensive plan policies. They can't. They can only apply their own policies and rules and statutes. They're not the ones who have the responsibility to protect your citizens. They're not the ones who have to help clean up after a storm. That's your responsibility. That's why you get to enforce your own comprehensive plan and code. What they might say with environmental permits has nothing to do with it. And in fact, when a presentation is made to you, these aren't the highest quality wetlands that the consultant has ever seen. That's not really the value of these wetlands, these mangroves in this location. This is about water storage. This is about storm surge. This is about protecting properties on the other side of it. That's what makes this particular location and these particular mangroves and wetlands really important and unique and worthy of protection under your plan, as the hearing examiner found. Those agencies don't get to make that decision for you. The policy, you have many policies in your plan. A rezoning is not any sort of entitlement or matter of right. All a landowner is entitled to is some reasonable use, like existing zoning, that's within the range allowed by your comprehensive plan. That's what they have. There's no entitlement to increase that. And you have all sorts of discretion based on any of the policies in your plan to say no. The hearing examiner has given you multiple reasons, any one of which on its own will uphold a vote to deny the project. On the question of is there competent substantial evidence to support those findings, that's why you have a hearing examiner process. Most counties don't do it that way. Most counties, it's kind of loosey-goosey in how they decide the facts. In this county, it's a really sophisticated process. There's no question that a full-blown evidentiary hearing in front of a hearing examiner has established competent substantial evidence to support a vote of denial based on any of them. An applicant can get up here and say, nitpick, I disagree that it's inconsistent with this, that, or the other policy, but any number of them will support the denial. And when you think about the context here, obviously, Ian happened. And obviously, we have every reason to be concerned, unfortunately, that those will happen again in this location. And it's the local government that has the authority to make that big picture. Again, the other agencies, they only get to look at these narrow environmental quality criteria. Under state law, it's only this board that has the responsibility and the legal authority to look at everything. The environment, the hurricanes, the public safety. You are the only entity in the world who has the authority to make that decision. And that's why your comprehensive plan has all these broad policies on all of those issues. And so all that is to say that there is virtually nothing to recommend this project. There's everything to support the denial. It doesn't have to violate every policy in the plan to support a denial, as the hearing examiner told you, just some pretty key and important ones. And obviously, given the location, this qualifies for a denial. We would ask you to deny, uphold the hearing examiner's recommendation. Really appreciate the extra few minutes that you gave me to speak to you. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Hey, real quick, can you give me the names of the speakers you spoke for so that I don't call them later?
Can I defer to Mr. Evans to give you the names?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sir, thank you.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we have Kelly Sloan here is in the audience. We have Audrey Albrecht, who was the first person that you called. We also had Rayanne Wessel, and we also had, I believe, Chris Lekowitz. So and we may have had others, but those are the ones I can remember offhand.
Okay, so if they'll just remember, if I do accidentally call their name, that they've already been spoken for by the attorney. And
yes, sir.
We all honor that. I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'll start with Diane Feik, or Fike, F-E-I-K. Diane, are you here? How about Robert? Same last name, Fike. Okay, I don't see Robert. William Felix? William Felix? Bruce Findley? Bruce Findley? Kenneth Fosty? Kenneth Fosty? Okay. Hans Friedball? Hans Friedball. Terry Verhouden? Terry Verhouden? Oh, are you here, Terry?
I decline to speak, but I'm for dismissal on this.
Waves in opposition. Okay, thank you, Terry. Carolyn Gardner. Carolyn, are you here? Okay. Gene Gibson. Roy Gibson. Kevin Godsey. James Goodale. Maybe Goodally? I don't know. Okay, Ethel Graham. Kongal Gulek. Okay. Kirk Gullidge. Pat Harrington. Paul Harrington. Lisa Harris. Gordon Heath. Oh, Gordon, good morning.
I waive my time. I'm in opposition to this matter, and I hope that you all will protect by enforcing the Lee County plan. I won't say any more because other people have said it better. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment this morning. Jeffrey Hinnick. Jeffrey, good morning.
Good morning. I'm a resident of Shell Point. I have spoken on this. I'm not asking you to do anything extraordinary. I'm asking you to do the ordinary of upholding the law and denying this project. My testimony earlier was to present a couple of pictures. One from my kayak of the mangroves in this area to be developed that we've heard is scrub. The second picture was of the adjacent area in the state preserve. I did not identify which picture was which and simply asked, can you tell the difference? And the answer was no. This is not scrub that has been destroyed. It is active, very productive swampland. I ask you to deny this project.
Thank you. Kathleen Henriksen. Kathleen Henriksen. Roy Henriksen. Roy Hendrickson. Barbara Herman. Barbara Herman. Okay. James Hill. James Hill. Susan Hill. Susan Hill. Ariel Hoover. Ariel Hoover. William Hopple. William Hopple. Judith Horgan. Judith Horgan. Judith, boy, this is Jostow or Jostow. Judith Jostow, okay. Ken Jaros. Ken Jaros. Wayland Jensen. Wayland Jensen. Andrew Joyner. Andrew Joyner. Wallace Kane. Wallace Kane. Ann Kimball. Ann Kimball. Mitzi King. Mitzi King. Judy Kissinger. Judy Kissinger. Okay. David Kraft. David Kraft. Gail Kraus. Good morning.
I would like to go on record as favor of denying this motion and
Well, okay, perfect. So that was a waive your time in opposition. Okay, very good. Deborah Lagorce. Deborah Lagorce? Deborah Lagorce? Okay. Chris Lekowitz or Lekowick? Okay. Harriet Levine. Harriet Levine. Kathy Lewis. Kathy Lewis. David McLeod. David McLeod. Oh, yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I live in Palm Acres, and I had the opportunity to stay during Ian. The tidal surge in my street was approximately 3 feet, which destroyed a lot of lower homes. The tidal surge a couple miles south at the Sanibel outlet was decimated, as well as Fort Myers Beach, which is a little bit further south. And I can only attribute the difference in tidal surge height to the mangroves that exist just south of me. And I vote no for the remand, and I vote no for the rezone. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Jerry Mater? Jerry Mater, are you here? Yeah, I don't see Jerry Mater. Daphne Mason? Daphne Mason. Okay, Daphne, good morning.
Hi.
Morning.
This proposal, I don't think is beneficial to the environment. My objection rests on 5 factors. It doesn't comply with the Lee County Comprehensive Land Plan. The second point is I see it as a threat to the health and safety of existing residents, and I'm one of them because I live in Shell Point. In terms of Shell Point Boulevard, it's the only evacuation point in an emergency. There are 2,088 dwellings, I understand, if I have the correct amount, of people who will need to use that one road. And then Summerlin Boulevard, you have all of Sanibel and Captiva coming off there. The third point is adding homes and canals increases the risk of road failure and flooding. We all saw what happened during Hurricane Ian. It was terrible. 4, replacing wetlands of homes will increase pollution into the Caloosahatchee. And 5, near to my heart is that this project will destroy critically environmentally sensitive nursery areas and destroy natural environments. These native species are already under terrible stress due to habitat loss. Destruction of mangroves is a terrible idea. It is one of the most biologically productive habitats around. And in terms of Lee County, ecotourism is very important to this county. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Betty Massey. Betty Massey, oh, good morning. Okay. What? Okay, so waives her time in opposition to this. Very good. Zoe Massey? Is Zoe here? Zoe Massey? She's not, okay. Sherry Matson. Sherry Matson. Noreen McCauley?
Yes, I will waive my time to speak in opposition to approval.
Very good. Fred McCauley?
Same, against.
Okay, thank you, Fred. Chris McBride? Chris McBride, are you here? James Metzler. James Metzler. How about Warren Myers? Warren Myers? Oh, good morning.
Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity to address. First, I am in deeply opposition to this request. I am from Shell Point, as many. I want to just cover a couple points. First, the point that was made by counsel for SCCF. We rely upon you to protect us. It is not what the feds say are appropriate for permits, water management districts, or anyone else that counts in our book. It's the commissioners who have to determine whether a request for zoning meets the plan. And this one definitely does not meet the plan. I think I had mentioned this in the case that you also have the Greenwell request that's referred to by counsel for the developer. And that also relates to the issue of your being able to interpret the plan irrespective of what the state or any other agency outside of Lee County may feel is appropriate. The second thing I want to point out is that much has been said of remediation and this so-called not high quality of the mangroves that they're destroying. My house on Shell Point is not next to this set of mangroves, but a very similar set of mangroves. It borders those mangroves. I suppose that our environmentalist would have said that these too are mature, like I am, and therefore not sustainable in terms of protecting against flood. That's just not true. My house is directly next to a mangrove area on Shell Point. And were it not for those mangroves, my house would have been inundated with feet of water rather than inches. It saved me. It saved the house. It saved the contents. Whereas many of those houses that were not protected by mangroves, as was mentioned before by Ralph Clark, had serious damage, feet of water. So whether these are mature or not, they are protective. And we need to keep protection of our mangroves. And I request that you deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Milbrandt? Eric Milbrandt. Okay, not here. Laura Miller? Laura Miller? Michael Miller? Michael Miller? Clifford Mitchern? Clifford Mitchern. Okay. Julia Magul? Julia here? No. Susan Moore? Susan Moore? Sandy Montclair? Sandy Montclair? Dorothy Morrison? Dorothy Morrison? Harry Nesteruk? Harry Nesteruk? Ryan Orgera? Okay. Pamela Pegahi? Okay. Justin Proctor? Justin Proctor? Bud Rogers? Bud Rogers? Carol Rogers? Carol Rogers? Kenny Rogers? No, that's just a joke. That's it. Sorry. Charles Rogers? That's good. Are you Charles Rogers? No? Oh, okay. I apologize. I thought that was Charles. Harold Roth? Harold Roth? Paul Roth? Okay, Paul, good morning. After Paul will be Mary Ellen Ruddick.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to come and share a few comments with you. My name is Paul Roth. I live in Palm Acres. And without repeating everything that's been said earlier, let me just share a story with you that I think might be helpful. I want to talk to you about what happened 6 months ago when Hurricane Ian struck. We live at 14761 Caleb Drive in a home that we built 4 years ago, a home which conformed to the required FEMA flood standards of 8.5 feet above mean high tide. Our home backs to the proposed Eden Oak development. We did not leave our home during the storm, and therefore we were eyewitnesses to the impacts of raging water driven by 150-mile-an-hour winds. We watched a 4-foot wall of water surge down Caleb Drive from the west, southwest, reaching just to the thresholds of our doors, and with only a slight amount of water trickling in. We escaped with very little damage, except in the garage. That's what happened. What didn't happen, what did not happen, was a surge of water rising up from the Eden Oak tract to the rear of our house. And I'm convinced that the mangrove area, sitting some feet below our lot, saved us from serious flood damage. Now, hopefully we will never see another Ian, but current forecasts by climatologists warn us of increasing storms of greater intensity. And I can't imagine what the impact of another hurricane would be if Eden Oak were filled to FEMA flood requirements and paved over with hard surfaces, and the essential mangroves gone. So obviously I stand in opposition to this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Mary Ellen Ruddick. Mary Ellen Ruddick. Yeah, I don't see Mary Ellen Ruddick. Okay. Roger Ruddick. Roger Ruddick. Joy Ellen Ryan. Dr. Joy Ellen Ryan. No. How about Dr. Kin Sakaro? Dr. Kin Sakaro? Christina Salerno? Christina Salerno? Christine Schulter. Christine, actually, I think it might be Schluter. Christine Schluter? Okay. Diane Schultz? Diane Schultz? Jennifer Scuteri, Esquire. Jennifer Scuteri? Kevin Shimp? Morning, Kevin.
Morning. I know some of you, and some of you I barely know, but it's good to see everyone. Jim and Gail Kraus said they would defer their time to me earlier, and as a civil engineer and a general contractor with more than 30 years experience working and recreating in this environment, I'd prefer if I could be allowed a similar amount of time to the applicant's expert.
Yeah,
won't be long, 6-7 minutes.
Pause his time real quick. Michael, he's not an attorney, but he's an engineer. What does the code say about that one?
If he's a member of the participants of record, he can speak. He gets the 3 minutes. He's asking for the same amount of time as Paul Owen had, and that is typically not done.
Okay, well, I had another participant defer their time to me, so if I overflow, hopefully you can hear me through.
So we'll start your 3 minutes right now.
I am pro-smart growth, and I am pro-development. I make my living building civil structures, a lot of it in this environment. That said, I strongly oppose this project. My land backs up to this project. The land was self-proclaimed by the owner's engineer upon application of the Army Corps to be 95.1% wetlands, so think about that. Since 2010, the new owner has been trying to get various permits to fill these coastal wetlands as if it were still 1960. Initially, they applied to the Army Corps, who circulates to other agencies, and some of the responses are really amazing. US EPA believes the permit for the project, quote, should not be approved because the project does not comply with the Clean Water Act. US Fish and Wildlife lists a bunch of protected species, and they restate that mangroves are federally protected. They disagree with the applicant and consider the site to be mostly high-quality wetlands. These are quotes out of their response. U.S. Fish and Wildlife says the applicant is not in compliance with wetlands mitigation planning and is very close to 3 national wildlife refuges. NOAA says that the project may violate the Magnuson-Stevens Act and recommends the permit not be recommended. South Florida Water Management does not issue a permit, and they seek troves of additional information. And you know what Lee County did with their, 24 things that are inconsistent with our plan. So I've done some of this work myself in my career, and this is the most rigorous initial rejection I've ever seen by a lot. Unless something has recently changed, there haven't been any permits issued. So I just made some notes. You just heard an expert say that about these agencies that they're working on permits, they concur with, are writing favorable opinions, reviews are complete, something is permittable, and something can be permitted. I never heard, here's a permit. The political environment has also remarkably changed since 2010. The state Senate is protecting mangroves. South Florida Water Management Board has been completely cleaned out and replaced with water-friendly people. We had 2018 happen, which we know, as we all know if we're conservative businessmen, that our environment is our economy. They're the same. So, we just don't do this stuff anymore. Most interestingly, though, the Congress passed the Strengthening Coastal Communities Act. That says that the United States government has made it illegal to subsidize building in this area outside of the high coastal or in COBRA zones. So this would make the National Flood Insurance Program and most other FEMA or federal assistance, which is the only flood insurance available to me in my home and is required for a mortgage, unavailable for this development. In a flood, Eden Oak would be legally without federal flood insurance or FEMA assistance. Lee County would be on its own to do hurricane cleanup and fix utilities and all these things you're getting reimbursed for now because you built in the forbidden COBRA area. Some of us know the men who tried to build in this place in the 70s. They were very tenacious. You might have known Quentin McNew or Tex Mann, some of these guys. They couldn't get through the permitting process in the late 70s and early 80s.
Thanks,
so just
Mr. Schimpf.
think about that.
Thank you, Mr. Schimpf, for your comment this morning.
Is that all of it?
Yes, sir. Yep.
Okay, I just wanted to comment one more on Bert Davis, if I can, and use some photos.
Mr. Schimpf, we definitely understand your comments. Thank you very much.
Photos that I prepared for you?
You may.
Is it part of the record?
This is my home in the storm.
Real quick, are we allowed to accept them, Michael, if they weren't at the hearing examiner?
If they were not presented as part of the hearing examiner's record, you would not present them today.
But leave them with the clerk, Mr. Schimpf.
We can use this time to allege the discovery of new relevant information which was not available at the time of the hearing examiner.
Yeah.
Hurricane Ian is clearly new relevant information.
You had your 3 minutes. Here you go. Take those back, please. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, just leave them with the clerk, Mr. Schimpf. That'd be fine. Okay, our next speaker is Margaret Singer.
Are these all the same?
Margaret Singer? How about Rachel Singletary? Rachel Singletary? How about Mary Tracy Sigmund? Good morning. And after Mary Tracy Sigmund will be Holly Schwartz.
Good morning. Again,
Morning.
thank you for this opportunity. I do live in Palm Acres, and you've heard now from 3 speakers that live on Caleb Drive, and they've attested to the fact that the mangroves in their neighborhood protected their homes from catastrophic devastation. Our home did not. We live on Shell Point Boulevard. We do not have that mangrove protection. So I'm really speaking for the protection of the neighbors on Caleb, to have their neighborhood be impacted like our neighborhood was, to have those mangroves that are protecting them now be removed and then mitigated, will not protect their homes, will not protect their property. They will be subject to possible flooding that we got, that we're still living through. And mitigating the mangroves that does not protect that doesn't protect the mangroves that are already there. And they've already attested to the fact that those mangroves that are existing, whether they're poor mangroves or without, they protected those homes. They deserve to be left there. They deserve to be kept. Shell Point Boulevard was a raging river. We don't want to make this devastation any worse. And to allow this project would be to you're taking a risk for the life and property damage of the people on Caleb and for the rest of us. When the storm comes again, and it's predicted that it will, this is going to happen again, we don't need to take a chance. You guys can protect us from having people take that chance. So impaired mangroves still do their job. Let's keep it that way. And I think that's all I want to say. I think for those of us, there are many people that did not speak today, and I think they can't be here. They're living through what we're still living through, trying to get our homes back together. So I just want you to know that. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly Schwartz, followed by Kelly Sloan. Wave in opposition. Thank you, Holly. Appreciate your comment. Kelly Sloan? Kelly Sloan? Okay. How about Warren Smith? Good morning. After Warren will be Nan Sprague, if she's here.
Good morning. My full legal name is Cecil Warren Smith. I do live on Caleb Drive. I've lived in Palm Acres for 26 years. I'm definitely against the project, have been from the very beginning. I too survived, mainly because of the mangroves. If it's such a great idea to have this flushing canal, why not approve the flushing canal to improve the quality of that land that is not pristine anymore? Maybe it'll revert back to being pristine in the future. There's an equilibrium in life. Things do go back to normal. The human body, we go back to normal, same way with our environment. Personal story, I have neighbors that panicked. They left their home. They started walking on Canaan Drive eastbound. They were being pushed away by the flow, but then as soon as they tried to turn southbound on Shell Point Boulevard to go to a home that had a second story, they couldn't do it. So they found another neighbor who allowed them to stay at their home. So they're saved, but they were in water that was midway up to their chest. Please deny this. I realize economics, we all work on economics. I know the side here wants to, that's their whole goal, is to make money on this project. I know the tax base would be enhanced by having 55 new homes. Even if it was at $20,000 per home, that's $1.1 million per year. How do you equate that with human life? Over half of the people that lost their lives in Hurricane Ian were in Lee County. Please protect human life, which is policy 105.1.5. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment this morning. Nan Sprague? Nan Sprague, are you here? How about Jim Stapleton? Jim Stapleton? Oh, good morning. Deborah Stein would be next.
Good morning. I'm Speaker 122. That's where we are in this process.
All right, we're moving along.
I'm a resident at Shell Point since 2018, and I've attended all hearings. I have no credentials as a conservationist, just a 30-year military career. As an Army brat for 17 years and serving 30 years, my wife and I have been in extensive and numerous housing communities. Our move to Shell Point was Carolyn's 20th move. As Speaker 122, excuse my voice, I never expected to have the opportunity to voice my opinion to Eden Oak. Most are not here, I think, because they're still dealing with the catastrophes of Hurricane Ian. And ironically, we're here today to talk about removing wetlands. My summary objection to Eden Oak, timed at 3 minutes. Storm defense. Wetlands are a natural defense against hurricanes. Lee County's comprehensive plan recognized this by limiting wetland removal and calling for reduced density in areas characterized as coastal high hazard areas. 100% of the Eden Oak property is located in the coastal high hazard area planning area. My suspicion is that land development and increased taxes may often win approval, or at least I believe that's Eden Oak's approach. For 7 years, this action has been kicked down the road, and we are tired of it. Our county staff has persistently and professionally presented Lee County plan. The well-salaried ESQ and profit-focused Eden Oak team has conveniently thrown obstacles to confuse and delay. 2 examples. A huge document 2 Good Fridays ago was delivered to the county staff at the hearing, and we had to delay the hearing for at least several months. And then because of the COVID rules, the Canadians couldn't come here to talk to us, so it was more delays. Shell Point Boulevard, no mention that this single access into Shell Point cannot take increased traffic. It cannot be widened. It cannot be made any safer. I heard no mention of that. We did not come to Shell Point Retirement Community, the largest in Florida and the second largest in the U.S., to have a satellite village development with families similar to living now with our kids and grandkids. Shell Point area should be kept as a single mission development. In our 55 years of Shell Point has experienced divine interventions, great leadership and stewardship, quality life care, and exceeded all resident expectations, as evidenced by a wait list of over 500 people right now. And
Mr. Stapleton?
this document.
Yep.
Right here. So
Mr.
I
Stapleton?
respectfully request your vote to approve the denial. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service to our country and your time this morning. Thank you very much. And we're just going to make an adjustment to the microphone real quick. And just a side note, when you come up, you don't have to touch the microphone. In fact, we prefer if you don't. It's a really sensitive microphone, and everything that's being done today is going out on our TV channel as well. So he's just making a quick adjustment to the microphone. If you could just make sure you don't touch it when you come up, that'd be great. Okay, our next speaker is Deborah Stein. Deborah, are you here? Okay. How about Pamela Stoicki? Pamela? No? All right, I don't see Pamela. Carol Martin Strange? No? Okay, how about Ty Simorski? Okay, Ty's not here. How about Max Ellen Taylor? Max Ellen Taylor? Okay. How about Audra Thomas? Audra Thomas? Lauren Thomas? Lauren Thomas? James Thomas? James Thomas? How about Julianne Thomas? I see her. All right. After that will be Patricia Timpson and Stanley Timpson if they're here.
I was just checking the clock to make sure it was still a good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to address you today. My name is Julianne Thomas. I'm here on behalf of the Conservancy of Southwest Florida in support of the staff report recommendation of denial, as well as the hearing examiner's recommendation of denial. This is not an appropriate area for intensification, and we ask that you deny the request for said intensification. As Mr. Grosso stated earlier, no one besides you is responsible for making sure that the decisions made are made in the best interest of the citizens of Lee County. That's not the Army Corps of Engineers' responsibility. It's not the Water Management's responsibility. That's your responsibility. So even though other agencies might have permit authority, they don't have the same authority and responsibility as you do to enforce the comp plan and protect the people of Lee County. I will note for the record that we spoke with the reviewer from the National Marine Fisheries Service on Monday. There is no active application for this project in-house. They are aware of this application that was about 10 years ago and remain extremely concerned about any proposed development that would go in on this site because of the impacts to the small-tooth sawfish. This is one of very few pupping areas, and it's really important that water quality and quantity not be impacted to the detriment of the small-tooth sawfish. I would like to just state for the record that mangroves are the best defense against storms and storm surge. And mangroves obviously can't get bigger if you cut them down. So, and at least one of the clearings on this site was done without a permit. So maybe the mangroves would be better and bigger if that hadn't happened. And just because they might not be the highest quality according to some standards, doesn't mean that they don't protect the public, that they don't protect the land, and that they aren't the best thing to be there for Lee County. Public safety should also be at top of mind. As you know, evacuation routes are already overburdened, and putting more people in danger at this location would be a bad decision. You saw a lot of historical aerial photos earlier, and I would just like to remind you, this is not 1966 or 1973. It's 2023. We know better. We need to do better. We need to make better decisions. And I ask you to please deny this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioners, we've been going for about 95 minutes. I've got 15 more names to call. You can see many of them aren't here potentially. Do you need a recess, or do you want me to finish through the names?
Let's finish the
Okay, perfect. Patricia Timpson, followed by Stanley Timpson. Patricia, are you here? Good morning.
I hope we reject Eden Oak. I'm also hoping you allow an important comment from my colleague Kevin Chimp, who didn't have an opportunity to share that.
Okay. So you're waiving your time in opposition to this development. We were told by our attorney we can't accept Kevin because he's not an attorney, but thank you very much for your comment. Stanley Timpson?
I was going to ask the same thing for Mr. Talk for me.
You're welcome to speak for yourself, or you could waive in Okay, so he's waiving his time in opposition to this development as well. Okay. Teresa Tyson. Teresa Tyson. Okay. Jack Upper. Jack Upper. Okay. Faith Wassersug. Faith Wassersug. Stephen Wassersug. Oh, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity, Chairman, Mr. Chairman, and Commissioners. The W's always seem to be at the end, but I'm glad to be here. I appreciate this opportunity to strongly oppose the rezoning. Truly, I now realize more than ever how much I am impacted by the 306 acres of wetlands that buffer my community and my home as I live on Fairhaven Road. After more than 25 years living at this home, my family, like most of my neighbors and community, have never faced such a personal disaster as Hurricane Ian. In all my previous testimony, I've relied on science, the expertise of the community, and the county staff to express my fears about losing the adjacent wetlands and the potential impact that might have upon my home, my friends, and my community. The flood from Ian was about 2 feet inside my home, has required major renovation, the loss of family history, but thankfully no loss of life. To say the least, it has been one of the most stressful periods my family has ever faced. I truly believe the wetlands were not there to provide the natural defense and buffer wave action to reduce flooding. I would not be here today to talk about repairs, but to move on as best I could. In so many previous testimonies, I talked about the what-ifs as if theoretical. The event was not theoretical. So as I conclude today, I beseech you to finally disapprove the rezoning of Eden Oak. Your own experts of the county staff have continuously recommended disapproval. The community at large has recommended disapproval. While the wetlands have met the test to save us through strong defense, let us not forget the other important benefits of the 306 acres to our community: to save the endangered species, to improve and maintain water quality and supplies, to support a strong economic viability to our community and to our county. If Eden Oak were approved, these impacts to our county would not be theoretical. We are here to protect life and property along with our Lee County, our assets, and you are the people that are most important to do so for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Okay, George Waters. George Waters. Joan Walton. Joan Walton. Tim Whitmire. Tim Whitmire. Eleanor Whiteside. Eleanor Whiteside. Donald Wichelt. Donald W-I-C-H-E-L-T. Okay. Jay Wright. Here. Oh, good morning, Jay. That would be Barbara Zeman would be next. Barbara and J.A. Zeman would be after Jay. Morning.
Good morning, Chair Hammond, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I think perhaps with the progression of the alphabet, I am the last speaker.
You got about 3 more names. Yep, you're very close.
Well, I've been sitting here and thinking what I could add to the other presentations, and I will try to confine myself to that. First, I hope the commissioners will understand, I'm sure you will, that when you call a name and no one stands up, it's not indifference. All of these people who are not here today attended the hearings before the hearing examiner. I myself did, including, it was spread over a number of days, and I was there on days even when I didn't speak. But there was considerable interest of residents in the area of this property. I am a Shell Point resident also. I became one in 2016, about the time this application first started. Many of those speakers would tell you what you've heard from other speakers today about the adverse impact of a rezoning. I don't ask you to take my word for that, but many of the speakers submitted written statements, and of course, there's a record of their testimony. In my remaining time, I'd like to address two things. One is the loss of the mangroves. It's undisputed that you're going to lose 40 acres approximately of mangroves if you were to grant this rezoning. The applicant says, well, we've done some things on Pine Island to make up for it. We've done some, and these are low quality mangroves. You have heard other speakers answer those points, and there's enormous evidence in the record already before the hearing examiner of the benefits of those mangroves, and you've heard about that. Let me address one last point. The applicant in his presentation today said, well, we've done the best we can on the environmental stuff. And if we did any more, we wouldn't have an economically viable project. That was said to the hearing examiner too, but no evidence of any kind was presented to back that up. We don't know what is meant by an economically viable project. But in any event, my light is on. May I just finish my sentence?
Finish the sentence, yes.
This is not one of those cases where an applicant comes to you and says, I bought my property years ago, and I've been ambushed by new environmental regulation, and it's unfair and inequitable. This is a property owner who bought under the existing zoning and does not have an entitlement to be granted a rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Thank you.
Barbara Zeman? Barbara Zeman? How about J.A. Zeman? J.A. Zeman? How about Robert Trey Zipperer? Robert? Will I be last? Yes, sir.
What happened? Who do we have it? What's the name? The Realtor.
He's part of the conservation.
Okay.
Good morning.
Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to speak in opposition to this development. Most of the folks have already shared everything that we can talk about, except for I live on Canaan Drive in Palm Acres. I've been through those mangroves with my children over the last 19 years. I know them very well. It's a beautiful place back in there. And you have to ask yourself, why did my alarm go off in the middle of my presentation? But so anybody that knows anything about real estate can use the satellite on LIPA, on our Lee County Property Appraiser site. And so I sell waterfront property. I sell plenty of it, don't need any more of it. They aren't making any more of it. That's what they always say, so I don't think we need to make any more of it here. But you can see the etchings of those cul-de-sacs in the satellite views covered with those less than pristine mangroves that they describe. And if you look at a photo, which they showed earlier, there's a photo from 1974 that shows a drag line at the end of the canal on Caleb, right behind Mr. Schimp's property. And you have to ask yourself, why didn't they allow that drag line to continue eating through that etching and creating those canals? So something happened back in there where the government made those developers stop. And if you talk to the old timers, which I did in the neighborhood, the two oldest neighbors in Palm Acres, they said that back in that day there was a mountain of sand on Caleb Drive because the deal was you cannot finish Caleb Drive until you put those wetlands back that you destroyed south of Caleb Drive. That's why those mangroves have 40 years of rings, is because that's when those mangroves were planted to restore the destruction that developer did back in those days. So we now have, when you develop a piece of land, you put that into preservation in perpetuity after you've made a deal to develop a portion of your land. Back those days apparently didn't have that, but this is basically the leftover land from back in the 70s, 60s when they developed this. That's why it wasn't finished. That's why it should never be developed. That we hope that you deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes the list of participants of record. Our administrative code provides for the applicant to be able to give a rebuttal to answer any of the concerns that were brought up. And so we'll give the applicant that opportunity now.
The applicant's requesting a 5-minute recess before rebuttal.
Okay, commissioners, we could probably use a 5-minute recess anyways. We will reconvene at 11:25. 11:25 we'll reconvene.
We're not making
All right, if everybody could find their seats, we'll begin. All right, so we have completed the participants of record, and we're now at the rebuttal portion of the agenda here. So go ahead and to the applicant's attorney, go ahead and present your rebuttal.
Yes, Sarah Spector for the record. I do have 2 follow-up questions in rebuttal to the public comment that was given, and they're both going to be for Mr. Owen. The first question I have was with regard to the Conservancy statement with regard to the National Marine Fisheries permit, and I did want Mr. Owen to provide an update on that.
Yes, this is Paul Owen. Yes, it has been a while since that project was being under review by the National Marine Fisheries, but at the time I was communicating with them and they were talking about writing a biological opinion that was favorable because of the replacement of the habitat as more than a 1-to-1 ratio. I don't know why they put the project on hold. I don't know why they paused it. They didn't respond afterwards to my emails, and so I have no idea why they stopped their review. I assume it had something to do with waiting for the Water Management District permit to be issued for water quality certification, and then we would have gone back to the Army Corps and requested that permit. I assume that's what they were waiting for, but I don't know.
Okay.
And the one additional question I have is with regard to the last statement made by Mr. Zipper regarding the historical development of the property. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, we did a lot of research on that, and there was an area that was restored, but that was not part of our project footprint. It's to the west of what we're proposing for the footprint. There was an enforcement case, I believe with the Army Corps of Engineers, that there was restoration that was done in the area that described to the west of our footprint, which allowed for the further development of Palm Acres.
But none of the
project proposed impacts are part of that restoration area. That area was restored and remains, and would stay exactly the same per our proposed project.
Thank you, Mr. And with that, we'll conclude our case, but I would ask that if you are going to make a recommendation of denial, that it be without prejudice.
Thank you very much. Do you have any questions for the applicant then at this time, commissioners?
No.
All right, thank you very much. All right.
Did Michael opine on what her request was?
Yeah, Michael, could you answer the part about without prejudice?
Yes, under our code, if a case is recommended for denial, the code assumes it's with prejudice, meaning under our code, you cannot refile a substantially similar case for over a year. If it's denied with prejudice, they'll be allowed to file a different application to come in within that year time frame.
Okay, thank you.
So just clarity, we have, as a commission, the opportunity to do either.
Correct.
And Michael, do you have a recommendation on that? The code, you said, assumes it is with prejudice?
The code assumes it's with prejudice unless specifically directed by the board.
Okay.
My recommendation is, in light of the testimony in the board's earlier proposed motion, that it be with prejudice. They have the ability to file something that's substantially different if they would choose to do so. But again, it's up to the discretion of the board.
Very good. At this time, I'll recognize the district commissioner to make the motion that he had talked about earlier.
Sure, thank you, I appreciate that. My request obviously is for denial. It's inconsistent with the goals, objectives, and policies that obviously I stated earlier relative to protection of enhancement of wetlands, protection of wildlife habitat, protection of property, limitation of public access. And we heard, whether weakened or not, obviously the mangroves did exactly what they were intended to do. And with that in mind, my motion is for a complete denial.
Okay, so we have that motion for denial from Commissioner Ruane.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Pendergrass. Do we have discussion on the motion? Mr. County Attorney Jacob.
If I could, with regards to the motion, the earlier discussion was to adopt staff's recommendation of denial for the reasons stated by Commissioner Ruane. If the motion could be clear to adopt staff's recommendation of denial as outlined by Commissioner Ruane, that would be appropriate.
Okay, so to the motion maker,
I am, and quite frankly, thanks for correcting me. I read it right off of your actual denial, actually in the report. The section I quoted for the record is right from your report. So yes, it's consistent with your report.
Thank you. That helps me with the resolution.
So the motion maker has clarified that it is staff's recommendation of denial that he is recommending, and the
Seconder is in support of it.
seconder is in support of that as well. Any further discussion then on the motion? Okay, I see no further discussion on the motion. Are there any objections to the motion? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you very much, folks. That concludes that case today. It's been denied.
Jim, stay, we exchanged.
All right,
Thanks for keeping me.
folks, we do have about 5 other cases, so if you could move quickly out of the courtroom, we'd appreciate that. Thank you. I'll give it just a moment to kind of give everybody a chance to exit. Thank you. Thank you. And if the staff could begin getting ready for the Homestead 40 case, we'll begin to take that up.
Anthony.
So again, folks, we do have about 5 more cases to go. If you could make your way to the exit.
It's a unique name, that's why.
Ask Richard about it. Ask Richard Bush about it.
Thank you all very much. Okay, good morning.
Good morning. Sharon Badam-Chen from Lee County Zoning. DCI 2022-00030. They are requesting to rezone 40 acres from agricultural to residential plan development to develop the property with up to 243 residential units. The property is located on Homestead Road. The future land use designation of the property is urban community, and they are requesting about 6 units per acre, which is in keeping with the land development code. And building height is limited to 35, which is the standard height for residential development, single-family development. And staff recommended approval after review of this case, and hearing examiner recommended approval at the hearing, after the hearing. There was 1 participant of record for this case.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do you have any questions for our staff at this time? Okay, I see no questions. At this time, does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
The applicant's here. We can make a presentation or not. If you have questions, be happy to answer them.
Any questions for the applicant? Okay, I see none. At this time, Mark Glosso. Mark, actually, it looks like Giosa. G-I-O-S-A. Mark, are you here? Okay, Mark does not appear to be here. Applicant, do you wish to rebut anything?
No.
No.
Just hoping some of the residents would join his lot, so I think he's good.
Okay. And then
I move the item.
we have a motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass. Second from Commissioner Ruane. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Commissioner. Let's introduce Gladiola's Self-Storage, please.
DCI 2022-00045, they are requesting to rezone 9 acres from community commercial to commercial plan development to allow for a self-storage development. They are requesting 140,800 square feet of floor area. The property is located at the corner of Gladiolus and Bass Road, Gladiolus Drive and Bass Road, and the future land use designation of the property is urban community. Staff reviewed this project and recommended approval subject to conditions. Hearing examiner recommended approval subject to conditions. And there were 6 participants of record for this case.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for our staff at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the applicant. Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Yes, good afternoon. I have a presentation if you'd like it. Richard Aiken, for the record.
I'd also like to, if you don't need to see the presentation, then I just ask time for rebuttal if there's any public comment.
Very good. We'll provide that time. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant at this time? No. Okay, seeing none, we'll begin to call the participants of record. How about Louis Berta or Louis Brida? Okay. How about Matt Devers? Matt Devers? Richard Malsbari? Richard Malsbari? Jeanette Johnson? Jeanette Johnson? Carol Massimino? Carol Massimino? Madonna Williams? Madonna Williams. Okay, that concludes our participants of record. There's nothing to rebut at this point then.
Move the item.
Commissioners, we have a motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass and a second from Commissioner Greenwell. Do we have any discussion? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Please introduce the MEVO North Fort Myers.
Hello, Commissioners. Beth Workman with the zoning section. The next case before you is MEVO North Fort Myers, DCI 2022-27. Just want to switch the page here. The applicant is requesting to rezone approximately 19.41 acres from commercial and commercial plan development to residential plan development. The applicant wishes to allow 285 dwelling units that include 95 bonus density units. The project is south of Littleton, north of Diplomat Parkway, east in North Fort Myers. It is west of Cleveland Avenue. It is in the central urban future land use category. They did provide a site plan that showed the units concentrated to the south. There's a wetland preserve that separates the Serendipity Mobile Home Park to the west, and located to the northwest, up in here. So there's a preserve that separates that. The amenity center is going right in here, and then you have the concentration of the residential down here. The property to the west, the southwest, is the Habitat Diplomat RPD, and this is in the mixed-use overlay as depicted on this map. And the mixed-use overlay affords lower open space requirements as well as reduction in buffers. The applicant is providing code-required buffers. There were no participants of record on this.
Very good. Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions for our staff? Okay. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Jeff Wright with the Henderson Franklin Law Firm. We agree with staff. We agree with the hearing examiner's recommendations of approval and the conditions and one deviation of approval. And we would respectfully request your approval. And we're here to answer any questions.
Very good. Any questions, Commissioners? Okay, seeing none. We have no participants of record and no need for rebuttal. Commissioners, this...
I'll make a motion to move the item.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Greenwell.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any further discussion on this? Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
The next case, sorry.
Go ahead.
The next case before you is Tibbetts Lumber Company Trust Plant Expansion, IPD, DCI 2022-11. This is a request to rezone 8.5 acres from commercial plan development to industrial plan development to allow a 60,000 square foot expansion. The property is located in Lehigh Acres community. It is south of Lee Boulevard. It is east of Westgate. It is currently zoned commercial plan development. As part of the overall commercial plan development, these properties are located in it as well. And what the applicant is doing is pulling the properties in red out of this commercial plan development to form an industrial plan development to add to the campus of Tibbetts, which Tibbetts is located right here and here. So that would just add to their trust plant expansion. This is the master concept plan for that. They have their parking located right along the arterial road. They have it in the primary building, and then they have open storage located on all of these for the assembly of the trusses and delivery and acceptance of materials. Property is located in central urban. It is in the mixed-use overlay again, as was the last case, so there is a reduction in the open space as well as reduction in the buffer requirements. The applicant is meeting those requirements for buffering. The applicant and staff are here. There were, I believe, no participants of record on that one.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions for our staff? No? Does the applicant wish to make a presentation?
Good morning again, Commissioners. Mr. Chairman, Richard Aiken again for the record. We would just simply request approval. We are in agreement with the staff report and the hearing examiner's recommendation.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Okay, I see none.
Item for approval.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass.
second.
Second from Commissioner Greenwell. Any discussion?
I'd like to thank the applicant and the owners for expanding their business here in Lehigh and creating more jobs there, so thank you for your expansion in Lehigh Acres.
Thank you. Very good. All right, any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, are there any objections? No objections, that motion carries unanimously. All right, next case, please. Daniel's Tractor Supply.
The next case is Daniel's Tractor Supply, DCI 2022-10. This is a request to rezone 7.7 acres from commercial plan development to commercial plan development to allow a 50,000 square foot commercial retail use. So the property is located north of Daniels Parkway, and it is part of, I'm going to go back, it is part of a larger PD. Let me pull up the zoning. So the parcel that you see outlined in red is part of this overall CPD, and what the applicant is requesting to do is pull the red out and rezone to a standalone CPD, and then the existing CPD would change to pull that property out of it. They submitted a master concept plan. Master concept plan shows preservation of wetlands along the western side, and then required buffers with approval of deviations along with the building here. The applicant is meeting the land development code with approved deviations. Provided the open space plan, just so you could see the open space, how much green space is being preserved on the site. And there were participants of record on this. There were 4 participants of record, and the applicant and staff are here for questions.
All right, thank you. At this time, do you have any questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Pendergrass?
Staff, what's the current use? I mean, I know it's commercial now, but what could it be used for now? Because I think what the residents in the area are going to be concerned about is the commercial use is mixed. Their area on the north side is ranchette, acreage, homes. It's changed over the last 20 years. The whole quarter has changed the last 10 years. So what could it be used for today without even a rezone? It could be used now for a commercial use. What could be there today?
This was approved originally for commercial offices with some retail. So it could have been developed as a commercial use. The applicant is requesting to pull it out for their own commercial plan development.
So like with what was developed east of this later, a couple, say 15 years ago, the federal jail there and the hotels and the Sal Rosa Lane with the mixed-use commercial residential, that's compatible to what could have been there today.
Correct.
Without any rezoning.
Correct.
Just want to make sure, 'cause I think that's the concern. And the applicant's actually going to plan to build a Tractor Supply store at this location.
As far as I understand, I can let the applicant answer that.
Saved me a trip Saturday to Olga. I had to go to Olga, spend an hour on the road, so that whole corridor could use a more supplies than having to go to Olga or Bonita, so thank you. Okay.
All right. Any further questions? All right, seeing none, does the applicant wish to present?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, again, Richard Aiken for the record. And Commissioner Pendergrass, to answer your question, yes, will be a Tractor Supply store. And just to clarify, the existing CPD would allow for 55,000 square foot of commercial uses on this particular Tract D on this site. The request is actually going to reduce that from 55,000 to 50,000. 25,000 will be indoor commercial, and then 25,000 will be outdoor storage. I do have a further presentation if you'd like to see it. The traffic will be reduced as a result of the use that we're proposing as compared to what would be allowed currently. If you have any questions, I have my team here as well.
Commissioners, any questions or anybody wish to see that presentation? Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll call the participants of record. How about Kelly Sheridan? Kelly Sheridan, are you here? John Lanigan? John Lanigan, are you here? Chris Marconi? Chris Marconi? Johnny Owenby? Johnny Owenby? Okay, I see no participants of record at this time. Nothing to rebut at this point. Motion for approval from Commissioner Pendergrass, second from Commissioner Ruane. Any discussion? Any objection? No objection, that motion carries unanimously. All right, at this time, before we get into the next case, I'll recognize Commissioner Greenwell.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I am abstaining from voting on DCI 2021-00050 due to a conflict of interest. My family and I own the subject property. I will file the Form 8B with the clerk.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'll just give him a moment to file that form, and it looks like he wants to exit the room, and we'll take up the case then.
You have to stay, huh? We have to stay?
All right. At this point, go ahead and introduce the item, please.
The next case is Greenwell SR 31 MPD. It's DCI 2021-50. The request is to rezone 76.82 acres from agricultural to mixed-use plan development to allow for up to 400,000 square feet of commercial development and up to 122 dwelling units. The property went through a comprehensive plan amendment, and so it is in the outlying suburban, along with the property to the north. The comprehensive plan amendment extended over to the eastern portion and followed all the way down to the river. So this rectangular piece in here all went to outlying suburban. And then this is the subject property. Here's the master concept plan. The hearing examiner recommended approval subject to the conditions and deviations set forth in Exhibit B of the HEC's recommendation. The project has larger lot, single family, flanking what would be the eastern side and the northern side. And as you work towards the west, the intensity increases as you work towards State Road 31. And so it is the mixed use. There's a preserve along the south side. Applicant and staff are here for additional questions. There were no participants of record on this.
Commissioners, do you have any questions on this item? No, I see no questions. Okay, does the applicant wish to make a presentation at this time? Morning.
Morning. Still morning. Yeah. For the record, I'm Ken Galander here on behalf of the applicant. We do have a presentation as well, but going through hearing the staff's report, we are in concurrence with the staff report, their recommendation with conditions, and the single deviation being requested, as well as from the hearing examiner, their recommendation of approval as well. So we respectfully request Board of County Commissioners approve the project.
Very good. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? Okay, I see none. Thank you. There are no participants of record. Does somebody wish to make a motion?
I gladly will.
Motion for approval from Commissioner Ruane, second from Commissioner Sandelli. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Okay, I see no discussion. Are there any objections? No objections. That motion carries unanimously. And that concludes all the business before us. We are adjourned.